Okay. Yeah. I don't know. I'd be concerned.
Okay, it's 1 p.m., so welcome you all back to the workshop for the 25-26 Tillamook County Budget Committee meeting. Are we recording? Okay. She took my gavel, so. So first up is the district attorney. Okay.
Our office manager said she was.
Hello. Welcome. Thank you. You guys must have gotten started back up after lunch early.
It started at 1. Yeah, your first one. For about a minute ago.
Oh, literally right at 1. Okay. Well, good afternoon. I'm Aubrey Olson. I'm the district attorney. I'm hoping everybody's had a chance to review my budget. We have 2 major changes this year. One's a change. I wouldn't call it a major change. Maybe you would consider it that, but one is a very major change. And it is because we've added a position, 1 FTE, for a chief medical legal death investigator. That position was created 2 months ago. We literally just filled it yesterday. So the person that we offered accepted yesterday. I know the commissioners are fully aware of this, as well as some other members of the people in the room today, but the budget committee, I know you've probably not heard about this. So our medical examiner, Dr. Paul Betlinski, after 45 years of serving as our medical examiner, is finally retiring for good. He worked as our local health officer for some time for the health department and had a dual role as medical examiner, retired from that, and then has just been our medical examiner. He let me know in no uncertain terms when I became DA 2 years ago that he was ready to retire. So we've been working on his succession plan for the last 2 years. It did involve working closely with Commissioner Bell and also, when he was Commissioner-elect, Fournier, and then coming before the board as we went forward with the plan. What it boils down to is Dr. B, as a licensed physician, was more than happy to be our medical examiner and do all of the work related to death investigations, meaning he's gone out on all the scenes, he responds at all hours of the day and night, on the weekends, he answers calls when he's on vacation, all of the above. He does all the follow-up investigation, all of the work that goes into helping determine the manner and cause of death for people who die here in Tillamook County when it's what we call a reportable death under Oregon Revised Statute, Chapter 146. So not every single death, but quite a lot of them. You'd be surprised at how many cases actually need to be seen by our medical examiner. Dr. B has been trying to help find his successor for quite some time. The problem is no one has been interested in handling the work the way he's done it, meaning they want to review work, paperwork, and they're willing to sign, but they don't want to have to go out on scene. They don't want to have to, oddly enough, we find a lot of difficulty finding a practitioner who wants to deal with the dead. Um, it's morbid, very literally. And so a lot of people who deal with living patients do not then want to deal with, especially some of this very sad, tragic circumstances that come with these cases. We did have somebody who attended with Dr. B, thought maybe I'm interested, but let's go out on a scene, and went out on a fatal crash scene and didn't handle it well. They're not pleasant. I would question somebody who found it pleasant, to be honest with you. But anyways, so where that left us with is conversations with our state medical examiner's office. Now, by statute, we have the state medical examiner's office, but each county has it's called a district medical examiner. Why they phrase it that way is beyond me. That's just the way the legislature at whatever point in time did. But it is per county. So the state ME does appoint our actual district medical examiner, and then the district medical examiner should appoint or is supposed to appoint medical legal death investigators to assist them with their investigations. And so the medical legal death investigator does not have to be a licensed physician. They don't even have to have a medical background, but they can do all of the field work, the leg work, all of the work. And then a licensed physician can review the work and sign off on it to be able to actually sign a death certificate. So in collaborating with our state medical examiner, we realized that's the model we need to move to. Other counties have moved to that. Clatsop, Lincoln, the bigger counties are doing that. And from all we can gather is that's what works. So after reviewing all of that, researching it, figuring out what it would cost, the other thing too is that for a full-time position, I'm going to call it MDI for short, an MDI costs a lot less than a doctor. As you can imagine, they didn't go to medical school. They don't come with a giant price tag. So our concern, of course, is this full-time work? You know, for whatever reason, unbeknownst to me, the ME's budget has always fallen under the DA's budget. It's not required by law. The only way I can wrap my head around it is that by statute, the DA does have involvement in death investigations. Basically, I'm required to be notified anytime one of these reportable deaths happens in our county. I collaborate with the medical examiner. It's all defined under Oregon Revised Statute, Chapter 146. And so I have a very unique role in that, which is, I understand it from the point of a lot of times these are deaths that we're not really sure what happened. We need to investigate. Maybe a crime was involved, maybe not, but it helps to have that legal mind. I'm not a doctor though. And so interestingly enough, if there is no ME, and we have so if there's no ME, it falls on the local health officer, which I learned in a recent leadership team meeting that our local health officer is also retiring. So if there's no local health officer, then it falls on me, which I do have some background, limited background in medicine. I also have quite a lot of training and experience with just regard to my job. But I am in no means the person that you want showing up on the scene of a death investigation and trying to determine manner and cause of death. If it's a murder, it's going to be kind of obvious, but I am also, there's other things. Sometimes we actually have a lot of deaths that when we really start poking around, we realize there might be something suspicious here. It looks like it's natural, maybe it's suspicious, and we have to investigate further. But I took anatomy and physiology in college over 20 years ago, but that doesn't mean that I can look at somebody and be like, oh, well, they suffered a massive blah, 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 blah. I mean, that's what it's going to sound like if I say it. So we need somebody who can do this work. And anyway, so the MDI is the solution. Oh, and the full-time work question. In talking with Dr. Hurst, our state medical examiner, he was like, Tillamook County can definitely support a person in a full-time position. Well, I was like, well, Dr. B does not charge us full-time. Come to find out, Dr. B is like, oh, I don't write down all my hours. We think he doesn't write down his hours by a lot. And I couldn't even tell you how much. It's just, he is a great soul, and either he just likes doing it and doesn't feel like writing down his hours or doesn't keep track. I don't know. But throughout this, we've realized he's just not billing us when he should be or could be. Those days have been a blessing. Now that we realize it, they're gone. So we're going to have to get our checkbook out and be willing to pay. This is a mandated service, as I've said, under Chapter 146 of the Oregon Revised Statutes. We are required to do it. The county, it's not necessarily a district attorney's office function, so it's general fund, but I'm happy to help manage that budget and make sure that we have everything we need for it to help make sure the program is properly administered. Anyway, so we also did create the position with a secondary role as a district attorney investigator so that in the event the work of an MDI itself does not take up 40 hours a week. And if we need to talk more about it, and I know everybody has to present their budgets and we have to have time for questions and all that. So I don't want to just keep babbling, but there's a lot of reasons beyond just the death investigations, basically, that role could take on more full-time responsibilities just based on some of the administration of the program. But there is also that secondary need for a district attorney's investigator. And in fact, had it not been for this whole need to find somebody to do the death investigations, I was preparing to actually come at some point this year and request a part-time position for a DA investigator just to help the DA's office with a whole host of things. And if you want me to go into the details of it, I'm more than happy to, but in the interest of time, I'll wait and see if you have questions. But this role, we were able to structure it in a way that it is a primary medical legal death investigator with a secondary function as a DA investigator, that it's full-time. We did find someone to fill the position that we are extremely lucky. The person that we found has over 15 years of experience as an MDI in Oregon. They are certified by the American Board of Medical Legal Death Investigators. This person also has a private investigator's license, took a short stint and decided they wanted to be a private investigator, which fits my needs beautifully. I'm like, wow. And is familiar, doesn't currently live in Tillamook County, but visits here often and is familiar with it. So we couldn't be more excited. I have somebody who is ready to get here and hit the ground running with that position and be able to get our program up and moving. And what's going to happen now is this person will come in. Dr. B's contract expires June 30th. So our new chief MDI will work with Dr. B for a couple months just to get, established with how he's been doing it. Like I said, with the skills and experience of this person, they're going to hit the ground running, little training. We budgeted for some training. This person's going to need continued training, but not like the full. We were budgeting thinking somebody was going to have zero experience and need like all of the training. Fortunately, this person doesn't need all of the training. So there will be some savings there. I don't know how much. It was literally an educated guess about how much this would cost for training. It's also brand new that it was kind of difficult to really determine what the costs would be. Anyway, so that's what the plan is for that person. And then with the skills and experience of that person, and that person actually has prospects for the Emmys. That brings me to the next part of the budget, is the actual medical examiner. So budget this year includes that new full-time position for a chief MDI. But we left in the budget, as it has been for the past years, for the medical examiner expense itself, because we still need a medical examiner who has to review and approve all of the work that the chief MDI did. And the chief MDI cannot they can't sign death certificates. They can do all the work up to that. But then the licensed physician is the one who has to review it and determine and agree with it or say, no, this is whatever. So we still need an ME. But we don't know at this point, because of the difficulty we've had in trying to recruit a replacement for Dr. B and realizing it's moving into a more administrative role. What we did is we actually asked Dr. B, can you please keep track of your hours? Tell us what you really actually work. And if you only had to do the administrative part, what would that look like? He guesstimated about 5 hours a week on average. So when we did the math, I was like, well, that's about what he's been billing us. And that's just for the administrative part of it. That's how we know he clearly hasn't been billing us for everything he's been doing. So that's why the budget for the actual medical examiner is about the same. That, and I know there's some expenses, and my office manager's back here. She's the one that signs everything and can tell me more specifically. But as far as like all of the stuff that goes into that, all the PPE, personal protective equipment, I think that's what that stands for. All the stuff they need, the gloves, any masks you need, the booties. I know we pay for the bags that WADS uses and stuff like that. So all of that would be about the same, but I just don't know exactly which line item, if it falls under directly the medical examiner or if it all falls under the WADS. Do you know, Christine?
It all falls under medical examiner line item.
Okay, thank you. So anyway, but when we look at the hourly rate, we know that Dr. B, we have not had an increase in his rate of pay since 2014. His contract has been $135 an hour. And we've been paying him, maybe 5 hours of that. So if we keep on track with that, if somebody comes in and does just the administrative part of the ME and it's approximately 5 hours a week, assuming that somebody's gonna probably want more money than that, it was kind of a guesstimate. I'll tell you where we're at with that. We ran a request for proposals for an ME and had no responses. And so now we are really just trying to recruit anybody we know. The person we hired for Chief MDI actually knows a couple of prospects who might be interested, but that's kind of where we're at, is trying to figure out, I know, talking to Marlene Putnam, our director of the health department has a prospect in mind because she's also looking for a replacement for the local health officer, but we are moving in the right direction. I mean, we have a pretty tight timeline, but we've been working on it for a while, trying to find that MD who can be our ME. So that's what we're doing. We just don't know how much it's going to cost. So it's really an educated guess based on what we know. So if we're fortunate, it will go down, but I think we're safe to assume it's going to cost what we budgeted for based on what we've been paying historically, what Dr. B has informed us of, what's the going rate. I mean, obviously you're not going to get $135 an hour office visit if you go see a physician. So I don't know what that's going to look like yet. We haven't been in the market for a medical examiner for 45 years. So if you have a 1979 vehicle and you go to buy a new one today, you're going to be a little shocked when you go look at the stickers. So that's where we're at with that. So at this point, I'd like to open the floor for questions about that whole thing.
So under the medical examiner expenses, that 67,000 is for supplies?
No, it includes the supplies. It's for the medical examiner's cost of service
Got
as
it.
well as supplies. We
Got it.
included it all in
All
there.
right, all right, thank you.
That'd be some pretty expensive supplies.
Well, that's yeah. Sorry, I missed the, thank you.
No, that's okay. That's understandable.
Is it a requirement that the MDI reside in the county?
No.
Is he going to?
This person is not, at least at first. My requirement for the position was they be able to respond to scenes requiring investigation within 2 hours. And where this person lives, they're able to do that.
It might be tough during certain parts of the year, but okay.
What I know is that our presiding judge lives over the hill and drives in 5 days a week and makes it. So.
Okay. Commissioners, you have any questions?
I just looked up some just to confirm regarding, there's a bill currently going through legislature that will allow, and it's still alive, for now, nurse practitioners or physician associates to do.
I was
this work.
wondering the
So
same.
that's hopeful too.
That's what I was.
I mean, mine is cool for us. in the future.
I just didn't even touch on that because it's speculative right now. Until we hit, the end of the legislative session, I look at everything going through it, it's completely speculative.
And I would just share that Aubrey did this whole analysis and worked through this with the commissioners, and this position was actually added in this fiscal year to get started. So this, while it talked about it is essentially a new position, it actually has already been approved through the board of commissioners. So just FYI.
Thank you for that. I think I glossed over that.
Yeah, no worries. Lots to share.
It's a lot, and we just went through the whole interview process, and we were amazed at how many qualified applicants we had from all over the country. So I'm a little exhausted from the whole process.
I have a question about travel, training, and mileage.
Sure.
In 2023, 2024, we spent 8,600. How confident are you that that number will decrease, especially with someone living out of the county? Are we paying their time, their travel time?
Well, we will pay travel time and expense once they're in the county.
Okay.
We're not paying for somebody to get from Portland to Tillamook, but once they hit, the summit on 6 and get to actual Tillamook, then we do cover their mileage. And that is, at least for now, and that's part of it. We've always paid Dr. B's mileage under the medical examiner. So some of that funding is actually under the medical examiner line item because we've always reimbursed him for mileage. So I hope that answers that. And then training that's for all the DA's office for training, not just for that ME. So like I said, it is, it's weird a little bit that the ME, all those expenses are under our office because it's not required to be, and a lot of their functions are independent of what we do at the district attorney's office. But I don't think that amount will, it may reduce a little bit only because the person that we hired is actually very well trained already. However, we have a new deputy district attorney who needs to go through the new basic prosecutor academy. And that's always a big expense for us when we have to put somebody through it. Just because it's a week over in Salem, we have to get them there, pay for lodging. The hotel is the most expensive part. I try to tell people they can stay with my mother-in-law, but but they can get some really good food, but I don't think they want to do that. Anyways, but yeah, so we just have, and we are very careful. I will say that we're extremely careful. I have people ask, new trainings pop up all the time, and come to Bend, come to Sun River. I was reading about this great training event in Sun River here in a couple weeks, and I'm like, we can't afford to go. Sounds like a great event, but how else can we get this training? So we're that, and I really just don't want my people to be gone all the time because I have to do all of their work. But we are always taking advantages of scholarships or free trainings, or hey, there's a grant for this, and so we try to take advantage of that as best we can. Fortunately, ever since COVID, we have had a lot more virtual trainings, which are really good for us to be able to attend those with no cost to the county, unless it's like a registration fee. It's usually the registration fees are not usually what drag us down, but we do have. There are some mandatory continuing legal education requirements that we all have to have just as part of our bar license. So, got to have our license to do our job.
Anything else?
I was going to touch on, unless you have no other questions, but I figured I could touch on the other real change is just that in our victims assistance budget, we had to shift some numbers around. The federal government, as of last year, under the previous administration, drastically cut the under the VOCA, Victims of Crime, the Victims of Crime Act. I think that's what that stands for. Sorry, I speak in so many acronyms when I have to actually explain what the acronym means. It's like, wait. Anyway, so the VOCA grant has been cut. And so I think we're good for this grant cycle. It's a 2-year grant cycle that will end. It's always so weird when we discuss it. And I swear I always go cross-eyed when we talk about it just because the timing is different. It doesn't line up with our timing. So our grant goes through the end of September, and then our new grant will start in October. So there's always that little bit of overlap where it's like the previous grant goes into the next fiscal year, or the current grant cycle, I should say. But starting in October of 25, the grant is going to be less. I think it's 22.5% less per year.
The funding is being reduced by 22%. Overall, VOCA plus state funding we're estimating is going to be about 13.2.
Is that each year?
No, that's for the grant cycle, the 2 years.
the two-year grant cycle?
Yeah, it's a 2-year grant.
Okay, all right. So anyway, that's Christina Votney, my Victims Assistance Program Coordinator. She handles all of the grant work on that. So she deserves gold stars every time she has to deal with it. It's a nightmare, that's what I'm getting at, and it's so complex. But, so there is a reduction just from the money that we're getting, but we have, she's really good with numbers, thank goodness for her accounting background, and was able to figure out ways to move it around, but it does result in, the way we had to move it around, just results in the county, I think, having to contribute a little bit more to, the actual salaries of the 2 employees, based on that funding cut. We are, again, it's all speculative until the legislative session is over, but, I know that they are working to get the state to fill in those gaps for where the federal government is falling short. And we've also done whatever we can to cut out, I know we always would build in other things that the grant could pay for, and the best we could, we shifted that around, what do we just not get? Lots of little things here and there that we used to get the grant to pay for, that's like, well, we're just not gonna get that anymore, because the salary is the important part. We've got to, at the end of the day, I say this all the time, we have a minimum bar that we have to meet. We can't provide any other services until we hit that minimum bar. The minimum bar is our actual service to crime victims, and being able to do those constitutionally required, statutorily required services. And so if I look at something, I'm like, oh, that's extra, we're not doing it.
Okay. Anything on that? It looks like next up is Cami, which it's just going away.
I'll leave that to Matt.
Oh, is that, okay.
Is that still showing up in the line item on ours? Okay, so that,
It just says that it's not in your budget this year, although it has been in previous years, so maybe you can just explain that briefly. It's coming to the sheriff's office.
So
it's just been moved.
It's just been moved to the
It
sheriff?
has been
Okay.
moved. I don't have anything to do with it.
As far as I know, it's not moved, it's being
Managed.
I can explain a little bit better.
Thank you.
I'd rather Matt explain it, because that Cammy Grant makes my eyes cross.
Historically, the Cammon Grant's been under the sheriff's office for years and years and years. It's been the dream for all investigators involved, is to have it as its own entity, 501,
I don't know what CAMI stands for.
Child Abuse Investigation.
Okay.
So, I don't know what the official acronym stands for, but there it is. But it's involving child abuse investigations. But we've been trying to stand up our own 501(c) Child Assessment Center, and that is closer than it's ever been. And we're really close. It is standing up. The board is in place. The budget's being drafted now. So all those grants will be under that 501(c) out of the county, and the remaining funds will be transferred to that CAC. So we'll still get the benefits of using that resource, but it will not be under the county envelope anymore.
And we're hoping for the end of the
It is on track to do that before the end of this year. Everything will be done. I just communicated with the director Monday, and everything is going. It's just gonna be close.
Thank you.
When I said moved, I meant like the numbers moved off of my sheet to someone else's.
Right.
Congratulations on hiring your MD.
Thank you. Thank you. Anything else from me? I know you guys are fast tracking and need to get on.
Is 145, is that under her or is? Yeah, okay. So I guess we're.
That's our law enforcement budget. We have, we collect fees for any discovery that we send out in criminal cases, and it goes into our law enforcement budget, and we use that to pay for, basically to offset, like our case management software, our evidence.com contract, all the things that go with the management of our case files. We're able to charge for those and then pay for what we need to manage it.
Okay. Y'all good on that? Okay, that's it for you, I guess. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sheriff Brown.
Good afternoon, everybody. So I'm going to first apologize and preface this by letting everybody know that I have a tooth infection and I am scheduled for a root canal in only a couple hours from now. I have to leave at 2 o'clock so I can get out to Hillsborough to take care of that. So I have not been 100%. I apologize if I become distant or anything like that, but I do have my team behind me. They are perfectly capable and I completely trust them to take over as needed. So anyways, I'm going to try to be fairly quick and fairly brief and just get through this. I'm not going to really touch on each individual line item that has changed. Just go through and hit some highlighted things. What I can also say is the three budgets that we got: the technology fund, the sheriff's trust, and Tillamook narcotics team. There's no major changes to those. Nothing worth noting, at least at this point. So unless you have questions about those, we'll just assume you guys have seen those documents and don't have any issue with them. As we move through the sheriff and criminal and jail, what I can say is we tried to be very modest on our budget this year. We didn't ask for any additional positions except for community corrections, which is special revenue, and I'll kind of explain that when I get there. We haven't quite gotten to the point where we're requesting that position, but I'll kind of give you a brief explanation on that. We only asked for 3 vehicles. I know 5 or 6 is what we've asked for in years past, and this year we only asked for 3. So we're trying to keep it kind of modest, as I said. So if we go down and we look at the revenue specifically for criminal, one thing you'll note is the city of Garibaldi has no number there. We've been informed, there's been a little confusion, but the official point to it is that, see, there's a little bit of confusion, I apologize. The city of Garibaldi is we're proposing a budget that does not include a contract with Tillamook County Sheriff's Office. They are running out of money. Now, the final decision will be up to the city council as to whether or not that budget is approved. I can also tell you that Under Sheriff Kelly has received quite a few phone calls from citizens. Citizens are not happy about it. They really like having us in Garibaldi, so the citizens may put some pressure and that may change. But as it stands right now, because of the information we've received, that's zeroed out because they don't have the money to continue that contract. So that's one major point to point out. As you move down the revenue, there's also the transfer from workhouse STR support. There was a transfer last year from that or from the DCD type or DCD fund. I don't remember if it was that one specifically. We left that there because we're hoping that the same thing would come, but it's also a reference to Ordinance 86, and I'm not sure, I know I've questioned it before, and I'm still very, very confused, but Ordinance 86 actually designates where the money is supposed to go from short-term licenses. And after administrative costs, 75% goes to housing initiatives, and 25% is supposed to go to public safety initiatives. If you look further into that ordinance, it actually specifies that a special revenue is supposed to be created for public safety as well as a special revenue for workforce housing. We have the special revenue for workforce housing, but we do not have one for public safety. So to my knowledge, we've never had one. So that workforce housing is there kind of as a reference to that. It does say the budget committee is supposed to designate that special revenue fund be created. So I don't know if that's a discussion that you guys want to have since this is the budget committee. As we move down, there's no real other revenues that I need to talk about. I would like to, as we get down into expenses for the criminal portion, the travel, training, and mileage is bumped up a little bit. We continue to see an increase. Well, our staffing levels are getting better. They are still younger, so we do have a lot of training that has to be taken care of. There's requirements for certification, both yearly and every 3 years, that every single certified law enforcement officer has to do in order to maintain their certification. as well as laws consistently changing. We have to make sure that we are staying up on all of our training. Of course, good training helps reduce liability as well. And then as we move forward to, you'll notice still on the criminal and the capital outlay, we have under vehicles, 154,000. That's for the 3 we've requested. And then we move into expenses on the jail side. You'll notice that we no longer have a dollar amount for the skilled service maintenance worker. I believe Sean touched on this during her intro yesterday. That is due to the contract that we picked up for our food services for our jail. The money that was there has been moved over to prisoners board to account for that. So like I said, Sean did touch on that. So that's what that's for. The repair and maintenance for building and grounds still on the jail. You'll notice it's bumped up. We continue to have high maintenance costs. We've got a lot of stuff that's starting to fail. Lieutenant Silvera has been working like crazy to get things up to where they need to be. A couple things to note, and Rachel, you may be able to touch on this. I know the port is talking about doing a very large sewer project, and I believe our portion, I don't know where that's being paid from, but I don't think it's in our budget.
No, I think,
Oh, actually, we haven't talked about that yet. That's in video lottery. So the Port of Tillamook Bay is upgrading their wastewater system. Part of their system services the jail. The portion that services the jail, we are expected to pay about $256,000 for. That's in a contracted bid currently. May go over depending on how the project goes. I'm proposing that be paid out of the video lottery fund, which is Fund 104. Which is a unique use of that fund. Last year, you may recall me presenting some out-of-the-box ideas on how we could use it for community development projects. I've received confirmation from council that we can use it for that. So that project is in video lottery.
Sorry if I jumped the gun on that a little bit for you.
The piece that's not in there yet or anywhere yet is any upgrades to the jail itself that we don't know if we need yet. But
we're having. We actually had a meeting with the crew recently because our jail is not like normal sanitation. The inmates flush a lot of stuff down the drains, and it's not just paper products. It's a lot of really bad stuff. So we're trying to figure out if we need to corkscrew it out or if we need to continue using our grinder and then pump out the tank. So at any rate, we're having a major upgrade at the behest of the port, and that's, as Rachel said, that's where that's coming from. It's not in our budget. One thing I do want to point out, which I think is very good because it's important to note, Lieutenant Seaholm had found an error. There was some money that was not transferred over a couple of fiscal cycles ago. It was a big chunk of money. It was money that was owed to the jail for bed rentals and programs and stuff, which is part of her grants and money that she forwards. Realized that money had not been forwarded, so we worked with Sean to figure out what we can do to get that money over. It's money owed. Once that money came over as money owed to the jail for services they already provided, bed rentals, programs, etc., the jail was actually able to utilize that money to buy new beds for the cell units or for all of the inmates. And the reason that I'm bringing this up is, number one, it's these new beds are part of the suicide prevention. The beds that we have now have metal legs that go to the floor, and inmates actually will take blankets and twist them up and tie them off of there and make attempts by tying them around their neck. So getting rid of those legs and utilizing these beds, which have they're suicide proof, or that's what they're marketed as, reduces that liability as far as attempts on suicide inside of our jail, or God forbid, an actual successful suicide. This is important because, and here's some stats that I got for you. In 2022, the jail had no suicide attempts. In 2022 and 23, there was one suicide attempt. In 2024, 1 year later, that had bumped up to 10. So there was 10 times the amount of suicide attempts. In 25, year to date, we're only in April, there's already been 7 attempts. So it is increasing at a ridiculously rapid rate. So getting those beds in there is critically important.
Is that a lot of that due to the mental
My best guess would be yes.
The help that's available that they're not utilizing when they're out?
Well, yeah, and I mean, Lieutenant Silvera could probably talk about that maybe a little bit more, but mental health is probably one of the biggest factors in it, yes. Our jail has become more of a mental facility than it's become housing facility. We have just a huge population, lack of resources. Tillamook County is good as far as like getting mental or mobile crisis out to us and stuff like that, but yeah, yeah. Yeah, so that's happening. Another big thing that's going on with that to kind of help save the county money, instead of paying a contractor to come in and install all those beds, we're going to install them ourselves. We have a part-time maintenance person, so it's going to take a long time to do it. In fact, I might actually engage in conversations with you and Kevin about borrowing some of yours. I think you guys have 3 maintenance people for the courthouse, 2, 3, 1.5. So maybe we can borrow once a week or something to help get those beds in there. We have a lot of other projects that maybe we can do that too. So I may reach out to you about that. But at any rate, we're hoping to save quite a few thousands of dollars by putting those beds in ourselves. And so that's a big deal because it really reduces liability. And then we found an avenue to do it without gouging into the general fund as we see it now. We did have it in our budget when we first started having conversations until we realized we could take this path. So again, as we move down, I think that's about it for those that I was going to talk about. Nothing major on the Marine budget. Community corrections, I'll just start out by saying that if any of you are aware, Ani's budget is very volatile right now. It's going through the legislation, and so she really has no exact idea of what her budget at the state level is going to look like. There's some projections coming out. There's some different information that's bouncing around. So it'd be very, very difficult to speak intelligently on exactly how much money she's going to have coming in. So we're kind of basing this off of projections and guesstimates. But yeah, that's what her budget is kind of set on. The only thing I think that really I want to talk about is the 8th position that you'll notice on full-time equivalent. There's been a couple-year process to restructure the sheriff's office the best that we possibly can for modern policing. It's kind of been the same structure for decades, and we're trying to get it set up better for success by making these small changes as best we can over time. One of those changes is getting another supervisor in community corrections. Ani is the only one, so she's having to do all of the grant management. She's having to do all the evaluations. She's having to run the day-to-day. And on top of that, she's carrying a caseload of individuals that are overseen by her department. So we need to get a sergeant in there so that they can take over some of those supervisory roles in order to better manage it. Now, exactly what that looks like, additional position, replacement, whatever the case may be, we don't know yet. This is basically just a placeholder. I have not come before the board yet to request that additional position. We're in the process of trying to make it happen, so this is just a placeholder at this point. But I think that is all I've got that I want to talk about, and I can take any questions. And like I said, if I got a little bit of time before I got to go, but I have very capable people behind me that can also answer questions.
So you described Garibaldi, the city of Rockaway Beach, is that the 450 there, is that for all 4 officers or?
Yeah, it should be right up. Correct. Yes.
So if Garibaldi doesn't want theirs, we'll take it.
Yeah, I think as soon as we get one out of training, we're actually, we've got one earmarked to come up there. So, yeah. And and actually I was going to touch on that. We have 2 people in training right now, 3 people in training, one at the academy, one at the tail end of this training, another one who just started for patrol. We have one in the tail end of the background process, and if that ends up going through, we only have one opening left in patrol. We haven't been that close for as long as I can remember. We have still 4 openings in the jail. We have 2 openings in parole and probation, one of which is a clerical position. So we have 1 probation deputy position. So we actually are gaining on things a little bit. We're getting closer, but I thought I would at least share those numbers with you guys.
So following up with Michael's question about Garibaldi, how does it change the service they receive if they don't have a contract?
So it's in Tillamook County, so emergency calls we respond to. That's about it. It's similar to what we would do in Bay City or Nehalem. We certainly have the ability to run traffic if we choose to, within their city limits. Same with like any other city that we don't have a contract with, but generally as a rule, we cover emergency calls.
So, but if they have a contract, then you have somebody stationed.
We have somebody stationed there, that person can actually handle ordinances, that person goes to their council meetings. It's just a lot more one-on-one personal attention, or, that's, if that describes it. Okay, yeah.
And I may have missed this the first time around. The new thing under this year for intercompany parks, did you describe that already?
Intercounty? I
Yes,
think,
I'm sorry,
I think that, is that the revenue part?
150,000.
Yeah, I think Dan talked about that when he did his presentation. Parks was going to transfer 150,000 over to the sheriff's office.
Okay.
I think they did that last year, didn't they? Yeah.
Is it at a different place?
We didn't do it last year. We talked about it in the budget workshops.
Yeah, mid-year.
Oh, okay. But it wasn't done.
Correct.
Okay.
I apologize. I thought we did it last year.
Okay.
We talked about it. Okay.
I have a question about the medical services. That's for the inmates.
Which one are you, are you talking jail expenses?
Yeah, you've got 4 categories together there. I think it's the 4th page in, about 4 inches down from the top, medical services, 380,000.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's for a contract with Adventist Health.
Okay, and what I'm trying to figure out, is that a reflection of the mental health issues and the more severe type of population?
Adventist Health doesn't generally deal in the mental health portion quite as much. They do kind of on its surface. We utilize TFCC for that. Adventist Health contract is more straight just medical.
Medical.
Yeah, and as you can imagine, and I'm not trying to bash anybody specifically, but the inmates that we have in our facility don't take care of themselves as well as some do.
Well, that's what I was trying to, if I was trying to figure out if there's higher acuity population, or we know there's a certain percentage increased health costs.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, a lot of the increase in that we've seen over the last year or so is due to cost increase in healthcare just generally. But it has less to do with the mental health portion of it and just general cost increase. They went a lot of years without jumping the price up at all.
Okay.
And so it was kind of costing them.
Sheriff, I'm not the brightest guy in the room. You spoke really briefly about account number 4828, the transfer from the workforce housing STR component. Could you maybe help me understand? You said that there should be something that we don't have.
Ordinance 86.
Ordinance 86. Thank you.
So that transfer was offered last year by Sarah, and so we put it in, and so it was transferred over, and then we left it in there. And I don't know, Sean, you had asked me about it and said that you were going to have a conversation with Sarah. I've asked about this before because that ordinance clearly says we're supposed to have a special revenue for public safety initiatives. It's section 11, I believe, a few pages back. 25% of all those fees are supposed to go towards public safety. We've never had that special revenue. So I kind of had that in there, assuming that we're supposed to be getting money from this public safety initiative per the ordinance. And we haven't been, so let's put that in there. And then again, I wanted to use it as a reference to talk because it also clearly states in there that the budget committee is supposed to designate a special revenue fund.
So you're saying there's not a special revenue fund existing?
Correct. And I don't remember when that's the first amendment for 86. I don't remember when 86 was actually put in place, but to my knowledge, we have not had a public safety special revenue fund per that ordinance.
I can talk about my memory about that is that when we passed 86, it was to create the fund that community development is using to incentivize workforce housing projects. And then 25% of it, the 25% that the sheriff is referring to for public safety, was intended to be used for code enforcement and for a code enforcement judge. And we haven't had that in place, so that money was in the budget. It was available last year because we didn't have code enforcement at DCD or the judge to look at the code enforcement cases. So I don't know if, I haven't studied that in Sarah's budget yet. Maybe you're doing it.
Yeah, I was just looking to see it just because I thought it was, and it is in, there's a transfer of 154,870 to the general fund, and then Sean, I assume that's just that pop over to the sheriff's budget, is that correct? Yeah, so that transfer is there this year.
Yeah, the offer she made at last year's budget hearing, yeah.
Yeah.
No,
So
I
that
had no doubt that it was,
transfers.
that it was here. I don't know if that 154 is representative of the 25%, that ordinance. Do you know why there was no special revenue, a fund created for it?
I don't. It's a great question, and maybe it's just something we haven't done yet.
Well, and I think when I did ask, or I'd asked some questions, and Sarah gave me a very long explanation, and it didn't make a lot of sense to me, and I think there was some discussion about the intent and code enforcement and stuff, but I still don't understand why there was never a special revenue created as the ordinance said, and there wasn't really anything in there that said what the public safety initiatives were. So, and I wasn't there, so I don't know the intent. What are we pointing at?
Sarah?
Oh,
We know that Sarah was on.
oh, okay.
Sarah, you
Hi.
chime in?
Sure. Hi. Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, Josh. You're doing a good job. So all of the money has stayed in Fund 122 because, to Sheriff Brown's point, that separate fund has not been split from the Housing Initiative Fund, which, Commissioner Bell, you are absolutely correct in what you have shared. And largely it's because we have not yet gotten that enforcement program up and running. I know Commissioner Fournier is interested in that. He's had conversations with the sheriff's office. With that is a hearings officer. And then also, if the commissioners recall, when the property tax exemption was passed by Tillamook County, one of the, I would say, the partnerships that developed out of that in terms of public safety initiatives, which Sheriff Brown, this is also why it's slightly vague, is because we heard from all of our fire districts that if the property tax exemption passed in Tillamook County, they were concerned about the loss of revenue from tax collection they would receive for these housing projects. Kingfisher at the time was the focal point of the conversation. And so what we also talked about with adoption of Ordinance 86 was ensuring that a portion of those public safety initiative funds were set aside so that when those property tax exemptions were granted, whether they were a couple of years or 10 years, that money would be there to help supplement the fire districts to essentially give them that lost tax revenue that they thought they would be missing because of that active exemption for as long as it was in place. So the money has stayed in Fund 122 because, Sheriff Brown, to your point, and I think it is time to create that separate fund out of 122 specifically for those public safety initiatives so that we can continue to give Sheriff Brown a portion of those funds, which are reflected in your budget and in mine this year, Sheriff, for 25, 26. But then also because those property tax exemptions are active, we need to talk about what that means for our fire districts. And then Commissioner Bell, to your point, we've got the code enforcement and the compliance program that we are in process of restructuring now. So hopefully that answers everybody's question.
Can I ask a quick question? So that does answer my question, and thank you. Just out of curiosity, is that 154, is it the 25%, or is it just, I'm not challenging anybody,
No.
I'm just curious.
Yeah. No, that's a good question. So last year, for this fiscal year, I believe it was around 130,000. The 154 is a portion of what we have collected. It is not the full 25%, Sheriff Brown, because I've got the hearings officer. We're working on the program updates. We're looking at hiring a code enforcement person, which may be a partnership with the sheriff's department. Again, that's where all of those pieces come in as we work through this next fiscal year to put these other programs, to implement them and put them in place. So that is what we felt we could confidently share out of that 25% while leaving that reserve in there in anticipation of costs for these other programs as they come on board, which will also probably include a supplemental budget. We just don't know yet because we're working it out.
And I appreciate that. And
Yeah.
like I said, I wasn't trying to challenge anybody. I was
Nope.
just curious where that figure came from, if it was reflective of that. The only other question I have is, do you know, like, you know, the intent, like Mary Faith, you talked about the intent, and I saw you must have remembered when that passed. And clearly, Sarah, you have very good memory of it. And you have a lot of detail, which is very appreciative. You have very good memory. That's better than I have. Anyways, is that stuff written anywhere? I mean,
It's
or is
all
it-
in
are
the,
we
if you
just
went,
relying on memory,
Yeah.
or is that written somewhere? I mean, I would assume with that
Yeah.
much detail it is.
so I helped put that ordinance and those programs together, right? If you go back to the hearing proceedings for Ordinance 84, when the board adopted it, that conversation is memorialized in the hearing. What we need to do though, so I mean, this conversation really reflects the timeliness of the sheriff's office, community development, the commissioners working together to get this program up and running for compliance and enforcement. I know Commissioner Fournier has some excellent ideas. I think there's a lot of cost saving measures that can put more of that funding towards the sheriff's office. But those are the things I think we need to figure out and come back with that supplemental budget once we figure out the best path forward for that holistic enforcement program and what that means.
And I very much appreciate you coming on and giving that explanation. I always wondered exactly what public safety initiatives meant.
Yeah.
I know the ordinance said that there was policies required, and I knew that some of these had been brought up before, and so I may end up trying to get a hold of get with Deb and see if I can't track that down just for my own edification.
Yeah. Well, and what I would say is it's time for you and I and Commissioner Fournier, who I know is interested in this, and Rachel to start talking about codifying our enforcement program and what that means so that we can, you know, define those policies and expand that ordinance to specifically allocate those funds. We haven't done that work yet. We have to make some decisions on how to move forward.
And
Thank you,
Josh,
Sarah.
The timing, that split between the revenues is in the original ordinance, not just the amendment, and it was
Correct.
in effect July 1 of 21.
So right in the first few months of my first term.
If that's what-
Yeah.
Yeah, it was 21.
Yeah.
See, I don't have a very good memory. Sarah remembers it all. Yeah, okay.
And the funds,
Ordinances or the initiatives, like all the stuff that Sarah was talking
So
about.
you had the amended ordinance in.
I did.
And you were wondering about the original. The original ordinance, which went into effect July 1 of 21, has the split. It has that same first paragraph.
Well, it has the split, but it doesn't talk about what public safety
No,
initiative
that's the
means. And what Sarah was saying is that's gonna be reflected in the conversations that were had when
Correct.
the ordinance was being developed.
Correct. I
So
was
I
just
would just-
affirming it was in the original
Okay,
one
yeah.
since 21.
Okay.
So let me know when you're ready to talk.
Okay, copy.
After his root canal.
Well, definitely. Thanks for reminding me. I actually do have to cut out, so I apologize for that tremendously, but when they said this was the first appointment to get it
Take
in,
it.
I've taken it. So, like I said, my team's behind me. They are perfectly capable. Any questions you guys may have, they can answer. So,
All right.
okay,
Very
thank you.
careful.
Thank you. Good luck.
I'm not driving. I'm making my wife do it.
Okay. Make her drive careful then. MJ, you had another question?
Yeah, and anyone out there could answer it. The sheriff's trust fund, is that the one that you guys recently put together with the 501(c)(3)? Oh, gosh, I was using my classroom voice too. The sheriff trust fund, is that the one that you guys recently converted to the official 501(c)(3)?
No, the sheriff's trust fund is usually where we store donations for search and rescue.
Got it. Okay. All right. It's totally separate from.
Totally
Okay,
separate.
Thank you. All right.
I don't know who answered, you might answer this question. The code enforcement that the sheriff and Sarah were just talking about, that's different from the code enforcement.
Well,
or is
that's
or
the
is it the same?
discussions, we're figuring that out, where, how
That
code
could be
enforcement.
all sort of the same.
Because the code enforcement that Sarah is speaking of, and the new code enforcement will have nothing to do with the sheriff's office.
Okay.
This is since we started doing central services, so we're changing, so now we're going to a more, because there's many departments that need code enforcement.
Okay.
So we're thinking a better fit is having it sit in the facilities department and be funded by TLT for TLT enforcement or STR enforcement. Like I said, solid waste has money set aside, public works has money set aside, so the vision has changed a little bit recently because we realized we can use some of that other funding and because we switched to central services. So I think the discussion that Sarah and Josh were talking about here is different than
what you were talking
yeah, I
about.
think so.
I had a question about the potential new position in corrections. Is it your hope that there'll be state funding for that?
Oh, with community corrections?
Mhm.
Yeah, so we don't have our numbers yet for our budget for the next biennium, which would include this fiscal year. So that would be the hope to add an additional position.
Thank you.
I was also wondering, is that job description, did it go through the TRUP process yet, or would it be new in addition to that?
It hasn't gone through anything from my
Okay.
understanding. So
Okay.
I think my understanding from Josh was they were budgeting it so that they have the authority if that goes through.
we have like a placeholder.
I hope you get that.
Any other questions? You got off easy. Oh, there's one back here.
I do have, I think it's a two-part question that two folks asked. And I think one was Sean, during the medical contract, you mentioned something, there was the funds are just for medical or maybe mental health.
No, I was asking if what did I ask? The suicide rate, if it was increased due to the mental, let's say instability, that the lack of people utilizing what resources we have in town currently, and then they went out there.
Which I'll add on to that as well. We actually do have now with Adventist, they got us two counselors, one an actual mental health counselor that can prescribe mental health medication, and a counselor that we can set up for the AICs or the adults in custody to go in front video when they're having a breakdown. So we added more through the contract to assist and help some of the mental health issues we have in our jail.
That's what the Adventist you're talking about?
So the revenue went up because we're adding more resources to help us.
Okay.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for explaining that, because there was a jump in the contract, so that
makes sense.
That's good news.
We've been trying for the last couple of years, and it's just been like everything else, staffing issues, finding the right people to apply for these positions, but we're heading in the right direction. So we're continuing to bring in the resources to our best to balance out with our budget, and that was part of some of that cost is to help out with that.
I think it was mentioned by the sheriff. I think it's been 300,000 since we started that contract. It's never moved, which we all know medical doesn't work that way. And so besides what the lieutenant was saying is that we added a couple services. Adventist Health has been very good to us and not nickel and diming every year. We need to add more. And it's a business model. We need to start paying a little bit more for the same service that they've been providing for several years. So it's a combination of both.
Well, the reason I was asking is if there's more mental health issues, that's a more expensive service. So, and that makes perfect sense. That's where I was going with it. Acuity wise, I mean, thank you.
Thank you.
I have one thing. Matt always complains that I don't give you enough accolades. So I just wanted to say to Sheriff Kelly, I appreciate your decades of service to the sheriff's office and to the county.
I'm glad this is on the record.
As do we all.
I will make I need
Keep up the good work. Appreciate you coming in person.
I'm going to make this my ringtone.
Okay, so emergency management, are you in the room? Let's go.
Okay.
still morning or is it afternoon?
Afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm Randy Thorpe with Emergency Management Director. I've probably met most of you.
All of us.
Been in a lot of the different meetings with everybody. I just want to start off with just a little review of this last year, just so you get an idea of where your money's going. We dodged a big bullet this year with no major issues through the winter. And I can say that now that we're into mid-April, which was really nice. I don't, but we were going to be prepared if anything happened. We did have that ice storm, and we ended up having to shut down county offices for a little while, and the process went extremely well and easy and smooth. Working with I think I was working with the payroll and got all the county managers and supervisors' contact information, was able to create a group in Everbridge or Mixel to where I can send out the text messages to them, and it goes out text, voice, and then it'll hit your phone, then it'll hit your other phone, then it'll give you a voicemail, then it will give you an email, and until you say stop, you just keep getting these alerts. And a lot of people didn't realize that and were wondering why they were getting alerts all morning. It's like, well, the system's set up that you have to acknowledge it, or because we want to make sure we get a hold of you. And I think it went fairly well that way, and we'll just keep adding to it and that. So that was really nice to get done with that. Also, this last fall, in conjunction with Chris Laity, we submitted a couple of FEMA grants, and one was for the Holden Creek project for $500,000 for the planning aspects on that. And we made it through the states, okie dokie. And then the other one was putting in some flood sensors out on Fraser Road. So we could they actually measure when the water gets so deep, and then it'll automatically turn on signs and alert people with that. Unfortunate thing is it's a FEMA grant. And I guess, I don't know if you've all heard, you probably don't, you may not realize what the grants are, but it'll just stop the BRIC grants, which is the Building Resiliency Grant. They just stopped it. But they said they're going to leave the flood mitigation and part of it. So I don't know what they're going to do with this other one. These grants were tied to the winter storm that we had a couple years ago. So I'm hoping they'll still go through. Keep our fingers crossed. And as I mentioned this morning to the commissioners, we were able to give the SAD-I approach to the Office of Resilience and Emergency Management, which is under the Department of Human Services. They were the ones that did the big resiliency hub grants last year that we all applied for, and nobody on the coast got them. Well, because we give them that sad puppy look, they decided that they were going to be able to place a couple containers here. So I just found out a couple of days ago that we'll be placing a 20-foot fully stocked preparedness container in Oceanside and in Cape Mears. And the reasons why the state picked those is it's two up-and-coming ones that need some help. There's no funding from the city, and so that's why they picked those two areas to deliver them, and they should be getting them here in the next few months. And so that's great news that we finally got something back through that. We also participated in the Great American Shakeout last October. The TC4 group decided they wanted to do a tsunami evacuation along with the big shakeout. So you're supposed to cover, roll, and hold, and then get up and run. So it was really successful this year. The numbers were over double what we had the year before. So the word's getting out from all our groups, and that's good news, that people are starting to be more aware. And so this year we'll try to double it again. So that's something they just do. We're going to start doing every October. A little bit about our grants. And all these grants now are put on hold, just so you know. The state's pretty sure that the funding will still come through, but they're doing their little evaluation. First one is the Emergency Management Performance Grant. It's a 50% matching. That's what goes in to help pay my salary. And this year, it bumped up even higher. They ended up paying up to $76,000 over our typical 66 because the state and the feds kick in some dollars last year. Probably won't this year. And the next one is the big one, is the Homeland Security grant. And I love that grant because I was able to buy my new ride with it. So I was able to buy what I call a disaster response vehicle, which is a 2022 Durango. And so I was able to purchase a vehicle with grant money, which is always nice. Finance loves me when I do that, and I have to ask. And that, plus, I realize I probably never get a truck. So anyway, that was a great grant. And then with our fire marshal's office, we've got a couple of different grants from them. First one was there's an emergency response plan that's tied to mainly hazardous material. And our plan is about 6 years old, and they came up with $20,000 for us to redo this plan or update it and get it current. And that's where they go through and identify it. So like, I don't want to know much about hazmat, but there's a thing called Tier 10 reporting. And that's the people who've got really nasty stuff that has to report monthly to the fire marshal's office. The big one, of course, is our premium. So we're redoing that. We're about halfway done. Consultants working pretty hard on it. We're getting a lot of good feedback and information from the county to help them work on that. And also, tied with that, they asked me if I needed some money. I put in for some training, and they ended up asking me this year if I could spend the money this year. And it was like, of course. So they added on to that $20,000 initially for it's basically another $12,000 to $13,000, and it was for HAZWOPER training. And I wrote it down. HAZWOPER stands for Hazardous Waste Operations and Emergency Response, because somebody asked me that last time. I think it was Mary Faye, so I made sure I did that. And so we got the money for the training, and I was going to be able to send 5 people to Portland for the 40-hour, and then we're going to have 10 people go to Portland and take the 8-hour. Well, during our last meeting with the fire marshals with our local emergency planning committee, it came up with like, why don't we have it here and have them come to us? It was like, well, it costs more money. So the fire marshal said, okay, tell me how much. So I found out either $7,300, and she said, sure. And we just signed that into here. So we'll be able to get a lot of it. Not only, it'll be like the fire departments with it, people from the creamery. I think Adventist wants to send a couple of their people, or at least one of their people through it, and then we'll look to see where else we need, maybe some solid waste people, things like that, that we just like to have this. It's not really required, but it's right turn down free knowledge is what I look at it. So hopefully we'll get that going there. And I found out I definitely needed a system. This year I was able to go through Rare AmeriCorps through the University of Oregon and get a member. I won't call them an interim, they're called members. It's Ann Moorhead, and I got her for like 1,500 hours out of the year. Very skeptical at first what we were getting into and was it worth my money. But I can tell you now, I'm trying to get her to stay on and then find the money somewhere. But she's been working just strictly like a lot with the preparedness groups. She is going to all the TC4 meetings. She goes to the individual meetings. She's there to help them with their things that they're doing, help promote and increase their brand awareness of all the different groups. She's also working with 3 or 4 of them on developing a 5-year strategic plan for people that didn't have one. So she's doing that. She was filling in for me and ran down to the south end because I just had a bunch of supplies delivered to a 40-foot container I was able to place down at the K's in Cloverdale. And somebody needed to meet him there to open it, and so me and Ann divided and conquered in that. So, and she's the one that did everything with the little preparedness fair that we had here in Tillamook to try to get some additional interest in the city to come up with preparedness committee like everybody else has. And so she had, I think, 25, 30 people show up, which was great. She kind of giving us their phone number and email, so we've got a good contact list. And then she's working with, of course, Chief Thompson and trying to push that through. And right now, I've turned over all the community involvement portions of two different plans that we're writing, the energy resiliency plan and also our the emergency response plan. And so she's the one right now coordinating with their individuals that are trying to make sure we have the public aware and we meet all the state requirements for that. So I found out what she likes to do and I'm taking advantage of it. She's also developed me some great tracking in Excel for the grants, for inventory, and now I'm teaching a couple of classes. She's developing my tests. And so it's been a great opportunity. So if any of you wondered it, I definitely got my money's worth plus more with her. So am I going to do it again this year? I don't think I can luck out that much. And so I'm a little leery with doing it. And so anyway, that's basically what we've been having fun with last year. And it has been fun. I got to admit that I really enjoy what I do. Work with some great people, and I'll stay here until I quit having fun.
Good. I just want to say I participated in the Great Shakeout in Rockaway, because almost all of Rockaway is in the tsunami zone. And I was shocked how many people showed up and participated.
Oh, yeah.
It was tons of people. So it was a good deal. Anybody have any questions?
I have a couple of questions. Yes. Mostly because of my being naive to this. Where are all the grants, where are they tracked? Like,
They're tracked by revenue source codes within the departmental budget.
okay, so they're not in his budget. They are?
4250 or 4225 are usually the federal or state grants.
Okay, so all the grants he's mentioned that we've gotten last year, this year, are in here under those codes.
Right. When I spend any money, she's given me the program code and revenue code for a lot of them. And so all my vouchers have that on them.
Okay.
And so she knows that, yeah, it's hitting my budget, but it's going to get reimbursed. So it's a great process, but with as many as I had this year, that's why I needed a tracking program to try to keep track.
Back to the accounting.
I was going to say, because again, I'm a dummy, where does the money sit?
It doesn't show here.
Where does the money sit? Because it doesn't show here. So,
In the original budget from last year. In the original budget from last year, it's not, no, because it just hasn't been part of the supplemental yet, or he hasn't reached the spending.
Yeah, some of the grants, they were foolish enough to give me the money up front. A lot of half the grants, it's a reimbursement.
right.
So she's got, I think, a little over 200,000 right now.
That's what I'm saying. So that's, my question is, I know it's naive, is where is that $200,000? If I wanted to look at our big budget, where is that money sitting?
In the 01540 with a revenue source code. And it would have to be a part of this. Since Aaron was politely pointing to my I would need to run an expanded GL. It would show in that expanded GL that it's under that revenue source code. It would need to be part of the next supplemental budget that comes forward.
But I'm not mistaken, it's not here.
No.
Second.
It wasn't budgeted last year, right? So because
Correct.
we don't have actuals year to date. If we had actuals year to date, it would show up.
Yes.
in his- Yeah, because it
And
wasn't.
a lot of it is hard because some of the grants fluctuate in what we're getting. And so sometimes it's hard to put in. It's like we put in 66,000 for the MPG grant, and they ended up giving us nearly 80,000. So
Right. No, I understand when it hits your budget. Again, for me, we getting money in, it has to be somewhere so that I can see that. That's all I'm asking. So
It just doesn't show on here.
If you went to the intranet and looked at the current financials at his department, it would show his income in his department currently.
Yes.
So it's up there. And then you're not expecting any grants in the coming year, Randy, that are in this budget other than your 66.
He still has money in the.
no, I'm still spending money to get reimbursed, but not that I'm hitting this budget. With one of the grants, I have to have all the money spent by September 1st. And so I've kind of put it on hold to get more commitment that we're not going to spend it and not get reimbursed.
Another question I had is, I know that Matt is no longer your backup.
Yes.
I see that the quarter FTE was removed from your budget, so are you no longer looking?
It's in contracted services, as he was looking for, you didn't call it an intern, it's a what?
Just, we're looking at my second.
So you put it on the contracted service and said, okay.
What I wanted to do was to leave the FTE there, but just not fund it. Because if I give up the FTE, I'll probably never see it again. So I figured, I think we
With
left
that one being,
0.25.
it was 0.25, with that one being a grant funded, that one would be back in there, but I can't show a FTE if it's not funded.
Okay.
So that's why the funds were moved down to contract.
And I can show you where we put that money, because we consolidated it in the budget when go
So
over.
that explains it. I was just wondering, want to make sure you're still looking for a second, and that explains where you put it, because you can't, like she said, you can't, it has to be budgeted if it's there.
I think Ruben does some if you're on vacation, but he's also the communications backup, so if he's not can't be part of that 0.25.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. So yeah, funds are there, it's just not, it's moved to materials and services.
And that's a 32,000 in contracted services.
Okay, those are all my questions.
Anybody else? Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Well, one more explanation. I just want to make sure you understand with the contracted services, what's in that. We have a set amount in that we've always had of 40,000. That helps us pay our portion of maintaining the river gauges. So that's always been in there. We also had another 40,000 in there that we distributed to north and south preparedness groups. We're leaving that in there, and I will distribute that more throughout the whole county. I took what we're paying Matt and dumped it in there for my backup. So that's why it exploded, but it didn't really increase from last year. So yeah, because it went up to over 101,000. So.
And just in case the budget committee is interested, we're looking for a backup emergency manager through contracted services. We're looking to contract with somebody because it'd be hard to hire somebody for a quarter time. And also, I think you don't get enough credit for all of the grant writing and grant work that you do. So maybe next year you could attach your new grant Excel spreadsheet. You could just attach it to your budget or to your message.
Oh, that'd be fun.
You could see it because you really are doing a great
Yeah,
job.
it looks great. So Ann did a great job on it. So yeah, like I said, I've been trying to get her, but she thinks she needs to have a little break before she goes back to graduate school this fall. So I'm still working on her.
And I encourage you to consider applying for the RARE again because this worked out beautifully. And it's not reasonable to assume that no one else is going to be good.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. I guess, well, Ann set the bar too high. And so I got to make sure everybody realizes where the bar's set now. So
thank you, Randy.
thank you.
Okay, we're going to take a short break here. One of our commissioners is dancing. Okay, we're back on the record, and up now is Mr. Laity with Public Works.
Good afternoon, committee members and commissioners. So the presentation is twofold. One, we get a little bit of overview of what the Public Works Department does. We do this every year, and then we get a little bit more into the meat and potatoes. We take care of a lot of things. These slides are a lot of people have seen in the past, so I'll just kind of go through them quicker than I have in the past. So we take care of a lot of things, road, bridges. We have a lot of equipment, guardrails, quarries, etc. A couple things drive our budget. If we take a look at this, about half of our budget comes from the state highway funds, basically your gas tax, your vehicle registration fees. 30% comes from transient lodging tax. We get money from federal highway, which is about $400,000. We also get money from the federal forest. We don't get state forest, and we don't get property tax. So major difference between the general fund. State gas tax, state collects all the money, and they keep 50%, 30% goes to the county. Tillamook County is interesting where about approximately half of all the property tax statements go out of county, which means if all those properties stayed in county, likely they would have cars. But they don't have cars, so therefore we don't receive revenue. The 30% distribution to the county is based on where your vehicle is registered. So if you are a second homeowner, and you live here 5.5 months out of the year, wherever you live, that's, if you're in Oregon, that's where your gas tax money goes, is that county. So second homeowners do not contribute to the road department or the transportation network. Short-term rentals, there's no registered vehicle for that facility, so the short-term rental program, we do receive information or money from the transit lodging tax, so they do contribute, even though that there's not a registered vehicle with that address per se. You've heard on the local news, ODOT is really struggling. Again, our money is tied to ODOT because of the gas tax. So up and coming, the Democrats at the state legislature are proposing a gas tax increase, increasing the registration fee, increasing the title fee, increasing the weight and mileage, adding a 1% tax, although they don't call it a tax, but a 1% tax on new vehicles, indexing the fuel tax to inflation, adding an electric vehicle road usage charge and road usage charge for corporate vehicle fleets. That'd be your UPS, your Amazon, and your FedEx. So those are some measures in which the state is trying to offset a significant shortfall. We kind of get in, all that directly impacts us because as they increase those fees, we still get 30%. They're trying to offset some major issues. More information outside of this presentation if somebody would like.
So 30% of all the, you get 30% of all this?
If it passes, that's right. And that is distributed based on the number of vehicles in the county. So that could be pretty reasonable for us. That hasn't passed out of committee yet, but because the Democrats are proposing it, there's a good chance that some of this, if not all of this, but some of this will actually make its way through and become law. It's going to be a staggered, so it's not all in one given year, such as the gas tax. It's 20-cent increase on your gas tax by 2032, with January 1st, 26 and 8 cents increase in your gas, and then it's 4 cents every 2 years. So nobody likes increasing the gas tax. That might actually die. Increasing electric vehicle road usage charge will probably be there. A 1% tax on new vehicles. There's 5 states in the, there's only us and one other state that does not have something similar to that. So of the 48, we are one of 2 that don't do something like that. They don't call it a tax, but it's a tax.
How do they assess the electric vehicle road usage?
That's something that they need to determine. So I think we're still fairly high level. ODOT went through the last couple of years doing a roadshow with the Transportation Committee. And when they came to Tillamook, I was fortunate to say, hey, here are some of our issues that we have. Our biggest concern with the counties is that ODOT keep that formula distribution. They keep 50%, don't take away our 30%. Don't chop our 30% down, don't take any money away from the cities. So they kind of shot themselves in the foot back in 2017.
Chris.
Yeah.
Over here, this way. Is that 1% on new vehicles, is that in addition to the corporate activity tax?
Yes.
Luxury tax they already charge on vehicles?
Yes.
Okay.
But again, it may not pass. So there's a lot of future funding. So when we look at roads, we look at 20 years out. We look at bridges, we look at 75 years out. So when you look at this and we've got a 20-cent increase by 2032, we're 2025 now. Some of these might end up rolling over a number of years. None of these are fixed. This is the current proposal at the state legislature, which could directly improve our funding in the future. But today it does not help. But these are proposed, some of these will actually come to existence. Again, watch ODOT. That's where we're directly tied to with the revenue that ODOT gets. So we obviously pay a lot of attention to any changes to ODOT's financing. Mentioned briefly, the Public Works Department does not get state timber. That's the general fund. We receive federal timber dollars, and the general fund does not. So one of the things that to kind of pay attention to federal timber back in 1989, we received unadjusted for inflation. So actual dollar in 1989 was $6 million for our road system. Today, we're getting less than 500, or 500,000. So 6 million down to 500,000. Now, if you inflate $6 million from 1989 to today, that's a lot of money. So that is significant. When we take a look at this, get a lot of issues is, hey, short-term rentals, you know, I'm contributing to the road. I want to see the money directly on my road. The truth of the matter is, back in the day, Federal Timber built the roads, not all of them, but they maintained all of our roads. That $6 million is what was maintaining our roads, not the short-term rentals. So now, fortunately, short-term rentals have really increased, and they've taken the place to a certain degree of the transient lodging tax. Short-term rentals has taken the place of the federal forest funds. So this chart is interesting. I actually took this chart, it was actually 8 million, not 6 million. I took this chart from 2001 all the way up to 2024 because I wanted to see a couple things. So 1989 was one of the years, and from that point, you started seeing the interest. Again, we look at things from 20 years. So what happened 20 years, 20 years. So back in 1989 into the 90s, so around 2001, at that point, we had lost a significant portion of our timber revenue, inflation adjusted up to 2 million. Our staffing we started dropping a significant portion of our staff. We are at a high of 50 people. We're now at 25 people. We don't run our asphalt plant. We don't crush our own material. We still own 2 quarries. So the interesting thing about this is, while we saw the federal timber fees drop, or revenue drop, we start to see the transient lodging tax go up. So when you project backwards, the revenue today that we're seeing is approximately equal to the revenue that we saw in 2006, inflation adjusted for revenue. It does not take into account the additional cost of material that we need to buy. Historically, construction costs their inflation is higher than normal. So what I thought was interesting, inflation adjusted, was the personnel. So back in 2001, we had 37 people. And if you go up to 24, we have 25 people. We're actually paying more per person. So I thought that was an interesting graphic right there. Also come along there, you start to see the impact of storms. So these are the declared storms. A couple things of note: when you started seeing our layoffs at the road department, or a significant drop in our people, you started seeing that from the 2000s on. About the time we started losing timber, and we started losing employees, has a direct impact on our pavement condition index. So every 2 years, we contract out with a consultant to say, hey, what is the state of our roads? And back in 2008, our roads were pavement condition index from 0 to 100 to 45, by far the worst in the state. We have since around 2014, I believe, a bond came into effect, and it made a big improvement, starting to help us out in increasing our roads. But as we started to do that, we also started seeing the influx of storms. So 2015, was a fairly rough year. That started pulling some of that money out to take care of storms. So there's a storm response and a cost associated with that. So that money, was getting used not only for the roads, but it was also the bond was being used specifically for the roads. But what was happening is that all the money that could have been going to the roads like it should was going for storm response. So the direct result of that is our roads started to suffer, and directly relevant to those storms. You can see that increase in rise from 2018, 17 up, because we got further away from those storms. We transitioned out of our bonding was in full effect. And then as that started to drop down, we started to see the TLT started to come back up. So the TLT has made a significant improvement for us. So we went from a pavement condition index from 0 to 100, from 45 up to 61. Our agency percentile rank is 50. We're smack dab in the middle of the pack. Ideally, with a similar size agency, we should be 75, so we're quite a bit below where we were, but we're significantly higher than we were. So the road department is comprised of three different funds. 160 is really fundamentally our operating budget, and 163 is our pet bike, and 308 is where all of our, basically our projects that are capital improvement fund. The operating improvement fund, so it just kind of took some highlights. This chart is, all the geocodes are the same as yours, but in my situation, I take a look at what we adopted last year, what am I projecting to have received by the end of this year, and that's what I'm using as the basis to determine proposed budget. The geocodes for the proposed budget are exactly the same, and the numbers are the same. So I'm only going to talk about a couple of things to highlight. If you take a look at the federal forest revenue at 450,000, that is blank, it's zero anticipated to come in this fiscal year. That revenue always comes in right at the end of the year, and I anticipate that won't actually make it within this fiscal year. It'll come in next fiscal year. So as far as the beginning balance, that number likely won't show up by the end of this, so it's going to directly impact our beginning balance. One of the things to note is this is the first year I have ever seen the state motor vehicle fund flat. No increases in actual revenue from the state gas tax. And the reason for that is multifold, but that is the biggest thing there is cars are more fuel efficient than they were in the past. And you've got the electric vehicles. House Bill 2017 tried to rectify that by adding some increased title registration fees to it, but it wasn't enough. So the gas tax is flat. Usually you start to see that 3%, which at 3 million, 3% is fairly decent. TLT fund, we adopted 1945. We're saying that's probably going to be pretty similar to where we were for a variety of reasons. One, we've capped the number of TLT properties. So are we at capacity? TLT is a little bit more of a guesswork than it is with the gas tax. Surface transportation block grant. That is the only federal dollars we actually receive outside of grant. So that is, it's not technically, it is a grant technically, but that's money we get every year.
And you think that's still safe for this coming year?
I do. So those core functions of the federal highway are remaining intact. When you start looking at resiliency, as you heard from Brick, you start here in terms of resiliency, coastal climate adaptation. Those are the programs that seem to be under the microscope, the target, the scopes as it were. So I think that's still pretty valid. This sheet right here is just a quick summary. When you look at our total budget, the budget seems to be very high. But what needs to be taken into account is we maintain a pretty high initial ending fund balance. And we also keep a fairly high contingency. Sometimes the contingency is not enough in operating out of our Fund 160, as it wasn't enough in 2015. So we also transfer a significant amount of money out into capital improvements. So while we have a lot of money that we're cycling through, the dollar amount for the operating fund is the expenses out and the revenue in is 12 million. But that also includes 3 million of unappropriated contingency, transferring money, et cetera, to other funds. So this screen, if I can zoom in, maybe. Okay, kind of hard to see. All right, it's a little better. So we have administration, we have our administration, our maintenance, we have our shop, engineering, and admin, engineering, shop, and mechanics. So it also breaks down into different sub-departments. So in administration, we started to see projecting outwards, we are essentially more or less on par with what we spent. And this is, you've already heard something from, I'm sure, from Sean is about what our projections on our salaries were to be. Fairly new to our budget is we're paying legal expenses. This is where we get into HR consultations. This number we are projecting to increase. The other number that's rather unique to, interesting to watch this, the inactive employee insurance. These are the people that are out there that we are paying insurance for a long time. It's unfortunate, but sometimes through this process, people pass away and we no longer pay their insurance. So unfortunate that they passed away.
A little back history on that is multiple years ago, instead of taking a wage increase, I think it was back in the 2000s, if you were here, an employee, and full-time employee, June 30th, 2003 or 4, instead of taking a wage increase at that time, when you retired, your medical insurance was paid and then your medical Part F. So we have multiple inactive employee insurance payments going out for retiree insurance. It's about 500,000 a year total.
Is that figured into all of these budgets?
Yes.
So was a selection people could make?
I think it was bargained at the time. I wasn't here, so I don't have the whole back history, but I think it was part of the bargaining units. Paul, you were here because you're one of them.
What was the question?
The retire,
The health insurance for
the
life.
retiree insurance.
It was before, it was before me.
Okay,
It was bargained, yeah.
but it was bargained.
Interesting. It was like a tier one benefit. I know a few people who are getting it who are like, oh, I got.
Actually, it's not for life, it's still Medicare eligible. It doesn't go away. Once you're Medicare eligible, you.
And then we pay
Actually, it goes forever.
Then we pay Medicare Part F.
She goes forever for non-reps maybe.
No.
Oh, that could be. That could be.
Teamsters is Medicare eligible only.
Oh, okay. I've talked to our former justice of the peace about it, Neil Emery, and he said, oh, I got the gold standard. Yeah.
But yeah, I think it was bargained as a payoff in wages at the time.
No, we're paying it. Can't if you're on the PUD board.
Okay.
So I got here in August of 2017, and by August of 2019, almost the entire road maintenance side had retired on. Currently, we are cycling through pretty much most of the management has, so we've cycled out most of the road crew and we're cycling out most of the managers. So within a short period of time, that we saw an increase in our inactive employee insurance because we had a mass retirement. But now we're starting to see on the tail end some people pass away. So we have no additional employees within our department that are eligible for this anymore. So that number will just continue to drop over time. So that's good. The other interesting thing that comes out of here is that we pay to the general fund indirect cost allocation. That helps to pay for our HR usage, Sean's time. It's a wide variety of things. Every time I'm in here, that gets added to that pot. So this year we've gone from last year was this current year 303,000 proposed at 283,000. And Sean, if you're interested, Sean can get you more detail on indirect cost allocation if that has not happened already. So moving through here, all of my vehicles we put into a separate. I take all that vehicles out of. I take all those vehicles and I use them. I just take all that money and put them out of the maintenance budget. We maintain them out of that fund, that sub-department. So the transfer to the bike fund or the bike path. So it's actually called the bike path fund, but it's a pedestrian bicycle is what it relates to. So 1% of the state highway trust fund has to go to pedestrians and bikes mandated by law. So we get approximately $3 million every year from the state gas tax. I'm going to continue to say gas tax, but it's a state highway trust fund. It's a vehicle registrations, et cetera, not vegetable. So 30,000 automatically goes over there. Where it changes quite a bit, and this is where we kind of start throwing some big money around, is to Fund 308. Fund 308 is where all of our bridges are paid out of. So we're looking at bridges, we're looking out to 2029, right? So it takes about 4 years to go from starting design to construction, 3 to 4 years. If your highway department's about 4 years, if it's us, it's about 3 years. And so we try to build up the fund under 308 to pay for our match for those future projects. So what you see here is that this current year, which I haven't done the paperwork yet, I don't believe, we transfer or will transfer $1.1 million from our Fund 160, I call it the operating fund, to 308, which is our capital improvements fund. proposed is dropping that down to $450,000 because we built up a nest egg in there that allows that to happen. And we'll get into Fund 308 eventually. Unappropriated any fund balance, we've been maintaining about $3 million each year for a number of years. That seems to be, we're holding steady at that point. That gives us a lot of flexibility for the following year. So we make sure that we have funds in there to take care of, all of our money is spent during the summer. Right, so when you look at it, we're paving during the summer, we're building bridges during the summer, they all take place after the first of the fiscal year. So we want that number to be high because we are paying out July, August, and September. So we keep that number really high because that's where a lot of our money goes. So the unappropriated fund balance is high for a specific reason.
Is the 800,000 for the operating contingency, that's new last year, right?
No, we keep it, we actually increased it a couple years back from I think 600,000. 800,000 is what we've been holding 800,000 contingency for a couple of years now. We haven't spent it.
Is it somewhere else?
Sean, it doesn't show, well, it's in, so that's public works, so I get these, you have all of these together, is this just
This is Fund 160.
160? So in the book, is where the question comes from, is that 2022, 2023 actuals and 23-24 actuals don't show an operating contingency in 9,900.
Because it wasn't, you didn't use it, I guess.
We didn't spend them. Yeah.
Is that what that's actuals?
Okay.
Yeah, because it was there budgeted, but we didn't spend it, so therefore the number was 0. Okay.
He tried to trip me up and use it. I wouldn't let him.
I did try one time. That was a misunderstanding on my part. What? So let's go. Okay, so the maintenance side. This is, we have 16 people. We're actually 100% fully staffed. There is one vacancy, and that is the South County foreman. The intent is to promote internal, but hire no additional people. So the number of people is correct. We just have a opportunity for somebody to move up. Kind of highlighting some of the items here is we've increased the, I've been working on increasing the training opportunities. So the training, we break it down into a couple of different locations. The training in this case is really specific towards the maintenance staff. The engineering side, which myself and our engineering project manager both have, or we're both professional engineers, so we have to maintain our license. So we see different funds there. So the training pops up in a couple of different locations. The number that everybody really pays attention to is, contracted services. These are things we need to contract to go out there and do guardrail work, things that we could do, but our time is better spent doing it elsewhere. We also, if we've got a wide variety of guardrails, the larger expense, but this could be, we have a guardrail or a culvert out there. So a couple summers back, we blew Sand Lake Road prior to the big slide. We had to shut down the road due to a culvert. So we, just like Highway 131, where they just opened that road up, replaced the culvert, we contracted for that work. Us and the contractor co-partnered to get that project done fast so we could reopen Sand Lake Road. So those are some instances that we have some danger trees out there. We pull that money out of there. Sometimes we do contracted mowing. And that's where all these numbers come from. Contracted services, in this case, is really more about maintenance. So this is the maintenance budget. Bridges, so that 7651 kind of changed the philosophy with that is those type of things are related to capital improvements, and I've taken that money and put it into 308. So it's really a philosophical change, not an actual change. One thing that you see increasing this year is this last year was the first year we were able to stockpile a significant amount of magnesium chloride. So that's our de-icer that we use. We now have 2 large tanks. We also have a Frankenstein piece of equipment that we can spray de-icer on the ground. So that's fairly new. Our de-icing program is only a few years old. We've also depleted, we still have some of our rock that we put on, our standing rock that we put on the road during winter. We need to start building that supply back up. So the aggregate in magnesium chloride at 7653, we've increased that up to help get us back up to speed on our quantities. The asphalt, the adopted budget was actually $1 million. We have put probably a supplemental budget that needs to get correct. We paid for contracted paving, so I reduced the total amount of the asphalt. So from our current fiscal year. The asphalt purchase for next fiscal year, beginning July 1st, this is material purchase, would be $1.1 million. That's just the asphalt we purchase. Paint striping continues to increase every year. So paint striping, these are the yellow lines that are on the road, the white lines, the fog lines that are on the side of the road, $400,000 to put that on the ground. So we buy the material, and then Marion County comes out there with their striping machine and puts that on the ground for us. Couple big things of note. Again, this is vehicles and machinery and equipment. We have obviously some aging vehicles that are out there, and then we also have a hard time keeping our mowers running. So I say mower to people think they're lawnmowers. And what we're really talking about there are the John Deere tractors on the side of the road that with a big arm out there that knocks down all the vegetation. So that's what that is. So a mower, we're talking $250,000, $300,000 for one of those pieces of equipment. We got a motor grader. The motor grader is the big yellow piece of machine that's got a blade underneath it that grades the road. These are the gravelers. We're talking another $300,000 for that. We're looking at a potential used one for about $200,000. So that money drops down pretty fast. But because we're spending less money towards Fund 308, that gives us some ability to do this type of work. So big numbers here. Okay, so we also have how about operator error here? Okay. Well, I don't know exactly what I did, but we'll try to take a look at that. I think that's still pretty good on the screen. So our infrastructure right away. So right after my presentation is Mike Rice, he's the county surveyor. Cape Mears Loop Road, we opened that up and it turned out great. One of the things with that is that it's a requirement for us to mark where the right of way is. Federal Highway did not do that, so we are contracting ish. We're going to transfer funds from our department, road department, to the surveyor's department for them to mark all the property corners changes to the right-of-way lines. Every time the right-of-way deviates, we need to put a pin in the ground. So we estimate it's about approximately $50,000 that we'll pay the county surveyor to put that on the ground. Another one here, because we're putting less money into our capital improvements project, that is contracted paving at $250,000. We'll pay a contractor to go out there and pay for us. So the $1.1 million on asphalt that we purchased and the county puts down on the ground, plus an additional $250,000 plus an additional $250,000 on top of that 1.1 that would go towards paving the roads. And hopefully they will continue to see that paving condition index tick upwards. So engineering personnel, we had an overlap of the position. So we saw that drop from what we had adopted. So what we were looking from this last year, so that number dropped to something that's more realistic for under today without an overlapping position. Not much else to say in there that's unique. Shop personnel. So this one is also, these are the 3 people. In previous years, there used to be 4 there. So I'm under Fund 16004 under the shop. So our operations superintendent was paid out of this subdepartment So there used to be 4 under that sub-department. The operations superintendent, I moved up to the maintenance component because the operations superintendent is intended to have more of a focus on the roadside. I promoted internally to have a shop supervisor. So our current, that takes on more of the shop, because the operations superintendent can spend more time in the road than what we have historically done. The big numbers that come out of this is we have an operating fleet, including equipment, of about just shy of 100 different pieces of equipment. These 3 people take care of the maintenance on that. We also buy, we need to run diagnostics on all of our equipment. So new to us, computer software, while it's budget just as it were, new to us is the software to run the diagnostics on our equipment. Fuel and lubricants. Big unknown with the tariff trade war right now. The oil that we use for our asphalt, potentially our diesel that we purchase, the Alberta oil fields is where a lot of that comes from. And the unrefined product for the oil, in particular the asphalt, is out of Alberta. It gets refined in the States, but that's where that crude oil comes from, is in Alberta. So everybody in the asphalt world is really paying attention hard to the tariffs and whatever comes down from that. That will determine how much asphalt we pave. Our trucks move a lot of asphalt to the job site. When we have a big paving year, our fuel goes up because we're moving a lot of asphalt. When we have a lower paving season, we don't move the trucks as much, so we pay less for diesel. Even if the cost of diesel comes up, we're just putting fewer miles on the road. So we had budgeted $220,000 for our current year. We project we're going to put down about $157,000 worth of diesel. We're keeping that static at $220,000. One of the things that is really, we saw R&M and equipment increase about 2 years ago dramatically. This also has to do with the aging fleet. So we have kept that budget at $230,000. We think that's still hopefully a little high. And buildings is the last of our operating fund. We've been meaning to put more money into our buildings, and we're starting to actually move forward with that. So kind of a breakdown with this under 7105. Yeah, 7105 is looking at taking care of some siding on our, so we have 3 yards. We have a yard in Cloverdale, in Tillamook, and up in Nehalem. We don't have the staff to manage, we don't have the staff to live or occupy or start off in Cloverdale. We do have one person who starts his day off in Nehalem, but these are 1930 era buildings. We've been doing some roofing, but now it's time to put some more investment into our buildings. So starting to get a little bit more in that. Our 7605 R&M equipment. So in our facilities, we do a lot of welding, we do grinding, we've got exhaust that takes place in there. What we are doing can be improved upon. So our intent is to try to get better air circulation and manage the welding fumes in the vehicle exhaust there. We do have some of those things in place, but we can do better. So we've increased that up. So that's what is different. So we're going from a budget of 0 to a budget of 14,000. So when you look at this, so we put money, so the big dollar shift, right? The big money we talk about is storms, which you've seen, but we also talk about capital projects. These are the bridges and asphalt investments. That's what people care about. That's what they see on the ground. You know, we need to do all of it, the culverts, etc. But what have we done? What is our split? So when we look at this and we start to see in our current, you start to see kind of a similarity where more or less you're running about $2 million between those 2 line items. And I took a look at that in our transit lodging tax, and they're approximately equal. So our current fiscal year and our proposed fiscal year, you're seeing both of them approximately $2 million for each one. And if you go back a little bit further, you'll start to see the bond money. So you go to 2021, 2022, a lot of that asphalt was being paid out of the bond. you start coming up into 22, 23, you're just shy, you're at, 1.9 million. 2023, 2024, I was building up a reserve, so we didn't have just a plummet when the bond went away. The TLT started coming up, so we actually put down quite a bit more in fiscal years 23, 24. And then you can see that we've kind of stabilized out at about $2 million. And not intentionally, coincidentally, that approximately matches our transient lodging tax. So, go ahead.
I'd just like to mention that you saying this makes me so happy because I remember the campaign that the former Board of Commissioners did in 2013 when they sold this. When they sold this, this is what they said would happen, that if voters passed the bond for 15 million, they would fix X roads. There were lists of roads. These are the roads we'll pave. And if they simultaneously pass TLT, they would direct all 30% to roads. And what they projected at that time is that TLT would rise enough to make up the difference. By the time the bond money was gone, TLT would have replaced that. And so ideally, barring something crazy, we wouldn't have to come back for another road bond. And I'm not saying we never will, but it's thrilling to me that played out exactly the way they said it would. So,
and I think it's a great coincidence. It's great that it worked out that way, and honestly, a little bit coincidental. I didn't actually recognize that until I was curious to take a look at this, and it just turned out that way. One of the things, so this was an intentional alignment, but it did work out. But one thing to note is that the transient lodging tax is, well, it's gone up and it's probably stabilized. It's still a little bit of uncertainty. The buying power of those dollars has dropped. So that's something to be, as you're going to see with all these budgets, is the buying power has really dropped. So TLT is functionally essentially paying for asphalt, and functionally it's paying for our capital projects, which is our bridges. Most of our bridges we're paying a match. We can pay 100% on those. We've built some bridges without $1 coming out of the road fund, and some we have to pay 100% on, unfortunately. This one's a very simple one. This is a low dollar. This is a brand new fund. This is Fund 163. It's specific to pedestrian and bike. And this is where I mentioned our revenue stream from our gas tax is approximately $3 million. So the 1% of that $30,000 gets transferred over there. It takes a little bit of time to build up. So we've helped to fund some of the work down in Pacific City. Current target right now is for the Short Beach Trail. So the Short Beach Trail is between Oceanside and Cape Lookout State Park. So a fair amount of money. This is in collaboration with Trail Keepers of Oregon. So volunteer plus a lot of money on that one. So pretty short and simple. I not get too fast with my scrolling the wheel. So Fund 308. This is where, if you want to talk big money, this is where the big money lies. This is where we start slinging dollars around. I don't mean to say it that way, but it's true. So the nice thing about being at the county is we're very nimble and flexible. So with the uncertainty of today's dollar and different grant money, and this one got funded, or environmental issues that delayed a project, we can easily pivot and adjust quite easily in order to, and still stay under budget and take advantage of things that pop up. This is also where we start looking at what is our future needs going out to 2029. This is a quick, these are actually all the general ledger items under Fund 308. So it's hard to compare one year to the next year and the next year and the next year, because timing on when things are built is important. We could have a summer where we didn't build anything, and the next summer we could be building multiple things. So it's really hard to do a year-over-year comparison on that. They're really project-based. So the breakdown of those, when we get into this, kind of highlight a couple things. So bridges fund, general ledger 7651. In that particular case, we are, the 690,000 is to take care of bridge repair work. not new construction and not funding from everybody else. That is purely our money with no match. The $6.6 million is match money for federal infrastructure project. We'll talk about Kiltro South in a minute. I do keep so this is the other place where we have a contingency. So Fund 160, 163, and Fund 308 each have their own independent contingencies. They all three have different funds, have three completely different purposes for it. So because this summer we have so many things going on, I put a pretty hefty contingency price on it because what's going on with tariffs, what is that, how does it impact us? Don't know, and I can't tell you tomorrow, and nobody else can, I don't think. Wall Street's really struggling too. So I also need to have a certain amount of unappropriated fund balance. That's not necessarily because our projects are built during the summer. So that's not necessarily the reserves that I need to fund for the future. It is rebuilding or building up our nest egg to take care of future construction. So 2029, 2028, we are looking at a couple more bridges to be built. Those bridges we pay 10% on because they're federal they're funded 90% by federal highway. So at 10% match, we start projecting out to 2028, 2029, we need to have money there to pay the match. The breakdown of this is the county funded only projects. We need to repair Prospect Creek and Stone Creek, both of which are on Slab Creek Road. They have the timber decks need to be replaced. There's guardrail that's associated with that. There is some of the wooden timbers underneath that need to be repaired. I'll kind of let you look at that and see if you have any questions. I can go a long time on this, but essentially we've got 9083. The money's come from a lot of different places. This is where our matching money comes from. We also have the money from other projects that are currently in design. The one thing I do want to highlight is Geocode 9083 and the Tillamook County Fairgrounds Storm Drainage Project, aka the Kiltro South project. So this was a 2015 storm event issue that took place here in the city. It went through design. FEMA funded all the way up through the end of the design. When it changed from the Kiltro South to the Turnstone Commons, it no longer served in the capacity of an assisted living facility. So therefore, FEMA decided they would not fund the construction of that project or pay 75% of it. So we had set aside the money to fully fund it. ARPA has already kicked in $640,000. That money is secure. We do have money in the road department fund to build it. Our road department funds can only be used for roads. So the commissioners and I chatted during the board briefing about some options and how to reimburse the road department. Staffing needs, as I mentioned, we are 100% fully staffed. We're 3 in admin, 3 in engineering, 3 in the shop, and 16 in the maintenance staff. Included in the maintenance staff new is an operations superintendent, the same position, we just moved him over to maintenance. 2 district supervisors, we call them foremen, 7 members in the south crew, 6 members in the north crew. The north crew, they don't have as many miles of road, so there's one separation. We do mix and match people as need be. So there's having that one separation still works out pretty well. Again, while we do have a vacant position for the South County foreman, that is intended to take one of the people that from the road maintenance equipment operator into that vacancy. So the total number of people would stay static. And that is the end of that show.
Thank you. That was interesting. You give just the right amount of detail. I'm just telling you, not too much, not too little, just right. One question I had, just in general, sort of towards the first of your presentation about the rating of the road. How does our Tillamook County roads equate to other sort of coastal communities?
As far as the coastal roads go, we're actually lower than the coastal roads. So when I take, to the best of my knowledge, I know that Clatsop County roads, we are hovering about, just broke 60. Clatsop County roads, they're about 75. Lincoln County, I don't know their number, but I know they're higher than ours. I think they're hovering, I'm guessing the speculation, they're probably hovering close to Clatsop County, which is about 75. So we are quite a bit below our neighboring counties. Further south, I have no idea.
So when we have said previously that we had the worst roads in the state, do we still?
We don't. So we are averaging, so in that one slideshow, let me kind of get it up in front of me so I'm not speaking incorrectly here. So how about I cancel that? So our current pavement condition, this is only on pavement, so this rating does not take into account, this rating does not take into account gravel roads. So we were 45 back before the bond was passed, which is by far the worst. It would even close. We're currently about 61. We're 50% across all the agencies. So we rank in the middle of a similar size agency, which is we're 28,000 people and the miles of road, et cetera. Somebody of our size, we're right smack dab in the middle of or that's total. We're 50% within when you take into account everybody. When you take into account the size of our county, we should be at 75. So the PCI of a similar size agency is 75. Our PCI is 61. So we are lagging quite a bit behind somebody of our size. When you take into account the larger communities, the larger counties, you take into account Multnomah, Clackamas, and things of that nature, we start to hit that 50% mark.
Thank you.
But yeah, we're quite a bit lower than, you take a 30 peak swing from 45 up to 75, and we've climbed halfway up there in a period of about 10 years. That's significant. Usually, even though we're improving the roads, they're also declining. So can we improve it faster than they fall apart? We're doing that right now.
Thank you.
And a follow-up question, clarification on the ARPA money. So the ARPA money started out for the Kilchis project, but it got reallocated to the Big Trout Bridge. So we don't actually have any ARPA allocated to the Fairgrounds project.
Right. Its original source was ARPA went to Big Trout. So instead of using the road department money for Big Trout,
Okay.
the original source came from ARPA for Big Trout. So essentially, it's not ARPA anymore, but it's
Yeah, it just
sourced.
sounded like it was being used for the.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, the Kilchis House, Tillamook County Fairgrounds Stormwater Improvement Project, that is 100% road. It's not tied to actually anything else at their current moment. Thanks for the clarification.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Mr. Levy, in Fund 16003, account 5300, you show a decrease of 180,000 from 24-25 budget and a decrease of 60,000 over 2023-2024 actuals and professional technical. You may have touched on this. What's that decrease because?
We had an overlap of a position for a while. So we had our senior MEO, our senior engineering tech position getting ready to retire. We brought on an engineering project manager. There was an overlap in the two positions. When we adopted that budget, we can say when people are going to retire, we know they're going to retire, but until that paper is inked and signed, I budgeted very conservatively with the adopted budget because assuming I still wanted to have a new person and I wanted to have the old person retire as that person did, but I wasn't sure exactly when that person was going to retire. So the budget was for a longer overlap period than it turned out to be. The problem when we put these things together in February and you're trying to project out. So that's really the fundamental difference for why they're different at that case.
Thank you. I commend you on throwing this in your presentation.
Thank you.
It's an A.
Yeah.
He gets an
Good job,
A.
Chris.
You're grading now?
Way to go.
And with
I
that,
thank you for your financial stewardship.
thank you.
Thank you.
And I promised Mr. Rice that I would not go too long, and I think because he wanted to make sure he actually did his today, so.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
How about I disconnect there?
Surveyor of it.
Online.
Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you, Budget Committee. Our budget doesn't change much from year to year, but there are a few highlights that I did want to hit. We have three sources of revenue coming out of two funds. One is out of the general fund fee 4301. That is for fees collected for submitted surveys, boundary line adjustments, plats. The second source of revenue is we do interdepartment projects for parks in the past, the commissioner's office, also for public works. So if their brusher hits a right-of-way pin and takes it out, we'll replace that, have to file a map. If they've got caps in the road, they're going to do a pavement overlay project. We'll come reference that out. Also, Chris had mentioned that Cape Mears Loop Road was going to have to be surveyed. So that's approximately a little over a mile. So we'll have to set right-of-way pins on both sides of the right-of-way, as well as centerline points, and then a map will have to accompany that. That should keep my field crew busy for the majority of the summer, really. So as you can see, our budget goes from around 40,000 to a projected 90,000. That's about a $50,000 project. Our third source of revenue is the Fund 119. If we could jump over to the PLCP fund. That's the fee that the clerk's office collects. We've talked about it in the past for preserving our corners in Tillamook County. That's a $10 cap fee that is associated with all land deed title transfers. So $9 of that goes to this PLCP fund, and I believe they keep the dollar for administrative fee. So we receive approximately $60,000 a year from the PLCP fund. That covers 15% of the department's salaries and benefits, and also some of the materials and services. But if you look at that beginning fund balance, you can see over the years it's starting to decrease. We're spending more money than we're putting back into that fund. But we do have good news. The county surveyors will, with the help of Mallory Roberts from AOC, drafted House Bill 3175, and that's to remove that $10 cap that was established in 1985 and allow local county commissioners to set that fee as they set all of our other fees. So last I heard, that has passed the House 47-9 with 4 excused, and there's a public meeting set for the Senate. So if that does pass and is signed into law, that would be my next move, would be to come to the commissioners and suggest that we raise that fee to help stabilize that fund. Since that $10 cap was set at 85, if you just use the West Region CPI inflation index, that $10 has the same spending power as around $30 plus today. So if we did, that would be my recommendation, to just straight across use the inflation rate. And then that would change that fee from 60,000 a year to 180,000 plus. So that would really help not only stabilize that fund from decreasing yearly. I think that gives us the benefit of future purchases for equipment. We've talked about that in the past, how we're going to come up with the money of these one-time fees. That should help that. And if we get the numbers we're thinking with this House bill, if passes, that might also decrease our reliance on the general fund. As I said, it's 85% general fund for our salaries and our materials and services, and 15% from the PLCP. So we might be able to adjust those rates. Back to the general fund. Not much changes here. Salaries go up slightly. Materials, services stay about the same. The only number that changes here is surveyor revenues minus expenditures. So it comes to about 379 and some change this year. It was 402 last year, so that's about a 5% decrease. And that's mainly from that Cape Mears Loop survey that we're doing for Public Works, that interdepartment fee. So really, I'd say those are three big takeaways. The 5% decrease in the ask from the general fund. Hopefully, if this House Bill 3175 passes, we can stabilize that PLCP fund. That would also help plan for the future purchasing, which is inevitable. Our GPS units are actually in the shop as we speak. And I guess that's about all I have. You guys have any questions for me?
As soon as it's posted and printed, it changes. There was Mike and I had a,
We're just saying that the numbers on our paperwork was slightly different than yours, that's all.
and I was just telling him that we talked after it was already posted, printed and all that kind of stuff, so.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I've got
Wasn't
slightly
much,
different
we just
numbers.
Noticed.
It was that capital.
Okay.
The piece of equipment, the capital outlay that we talked about.
Oh, correct. Yes, our large format plotter.
Yeah.
Yeah, that company sold out, so they didn't want to honor the R&M and the lease for the old plotter. So the company that bought them out has a very similar plotter that we use daily. If that went out, we'd be dead in the water in a lot of ways. So we're working on a new lease agreement with them. And not only the lease, the repair and maintenance is huge. If something happens with that, they send somebody over the next day to fix it for us.
Yeah, these spreadsheets change daily. I think you have the most up-to-date ones.
The one we have or the one he has?
One you have.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Rice?
No questions.
All right, thanks for your report.
All right, thank you guys.
Oh, look at that, we're early again.
We're early again. Yes.
Again,
Woo-hoo.
Excellent leadership.
Extra credit, yeah.
Sorry for you.
So I guess tomorrow we start at 10, is that right?
Correct. We'll start, because Juvenile was unable to attend yesterday, we first thing in the morning at 10 o'clock.
Okay. And everybody's on notice, so we may be getting through faster.
Sending an email out to everybody
To keep an eye on the time, okay.
Yes. And we took the treasurer on Thursday or on Tuesday, so I'll just let library and everybody else be on them now to bump up a little bit.
Okay. All right, so we'll close the hearing today.
And today we can leave all our stuff.
You can leave all your stuff.
There's nothing in here until tomorrow morning.
You can leave it, you can take it. I'm just, they're not breaking down the tables.
Okay, all right.
You should go send out an email with subject title, Michael's not messing around.
Well, some of it, Michael, thank you,
Yeah.
thank you.